we are here talking today. I'm really excited, actually. I only just saw Black Panther yesterday. I know that most of you all saw it. Well, many of you saw it before it even came out at screeners. But I finally saw it yesterday, and I was pretty much doing a little dance all day. I was so excited.
Did you hit him with the shoulders, Patrick?
I was excited. All right, so, anyways, I wanted to have a discussion that got a little bit deeper. We've already done a review. Several of our sister podcasts have done reviews, but I thought it would be really cool to do a deeper dive into this movie because I think this movie is kind of a touchstone moment, and it is clearly having an impact, really nationwide and arguably across the globe, which I think is really cool. That's pretty rare for a movie, and I just wanted to, use that as a launching point to talk about the themes and kind of the direction that Ryan Coogler was clearly trying to take this movie. With that, I just want to do some introductions of my panel I have here today. And so we'll start with you, Mo Crosby. I just want you to give introduce yourself, give a two-sentence review.
Okay.
Review
I know
of what you thought of Black Panther. Two-sentence, Anthony Wiggins, of what you thought of this movie.
Well,
and then also,
Keem has spell checked some of my stuff, so she knows I can do a run-on sentence like nobody. So.
That's true. Well, also how this movie maybe connected to your own personal life story, like how maybe tell us a little bit about yourself as it connects maybe to Black Panther. So Mo, you want to go ahead and start us off?
Man, that's a lot more than two sentences.
The review is two sentences.
Okay,
you can go a little deeper into your love story.
How do I do this? This is a first for me because I'm usually the one like asking the questions. So this is very weird. So I don't know how to do
I
this.
like putting you in the hot seat. You're always putting me in the hot seat. This is some karma right here.
I've actually never done this. Yeah, it's Mo Crosby from Earth.
That's what he always says.
Comic Cast. Don't interrupt me, Anthony. It's Mo Crosby from Earth 2 Comic Cast. Wow. Okay, so Black Panther. It was good, not great. I liked it. I thought the message it was sending was pretty good, and I will go into a review and a full review later on, not now. But in how it connects to me is it showed, there was two things I hope this movie did, and it did one of them really well. It showed how elite Africans look at other Africans, and look at, everybody else. And it did that really well. I saw a little of my younger self in Eric Killmonger. So I thought, it connected a little bit. A little, Keem, just a little bit. But yeah, I saw that.
Brought out that kill Whitey in you?
No.
And I'm out.
But yeah, I saw a little bit of my younger self in Eric, but that's about it. So that's. I don't want to talk too much about that because we're gonna get into a deeper dive of the movie, and I want to give everybody a chance to talk. Anthony.
Okay, Anthony, go ahead.
I enjoyed the movie. I think it was a lot of deeper levels. I had a really interesting time explaining to other cultures certain scenes that didn't have they didn't connect with them. I thought that was really interesting. I've heard a reviewer talk about how he didn't connect with one scene, but then he heard someone else talk about a scene, and I guess we can get into that. And it's been interesting. It's a very like onion layered movie where you could take a lot from it depending on your perspective. I know you can say that about everything, but like this is really I don't think it could be done by anybody but people from these different cultures. How it connects to me is part of that. I talked to Mo about this before, and I talked to Ray, a friend of ours, Nigeria, earlier today, and I should have asked him, but I think there's a cultural divide between Black Americans and those from Pan Africa, and I think that this movie touched on that. I think that that's really interesting. I think also being African American, not seeing yourself represented in any superheroes or video games growing up, or even when you are shown in someone like you shown on the big screen, it's usually in like 3 different roles. It's usually telling the same story. So to see fathers lovingly mentor and give emotion to their sons and having them inherit something besides just bitterness, or trying to at least, was really interesting for me.
Thanks, Anthony. Team, you're
I
muted.
can't unmute myself. Okay. Like I hit the button and it wasn't working. I'm Keem. I don't know how to unmute myself. One sentence review. I thought the movie was dope. Second sentence, I almost cried like 10 times, but I had on not waterproof mascara, and so that was going to be a really bad look for me when I came out.
Wow.
I'm sure we've all been there.
As far as like connecting to the movie, for me, I just think representation, it matters. Like I was thinking earlier about when I was in the 1st grade and we were going to have this Halloween costume contest. And so everybody had to say what they were going to be. And I was like, I'm going to be Glinda the Good Witch. And one of my classmates, I still remember her name, I won't say it out loud, but she looked at me and said, well, you can't be Glinda because you're Black. And I was crushed. Like I started crying. I went home crying. And my mom, like, thank God for my mom, because she was like, no, you about to be Glinda and you're going to be the best Glinda that they have up there, white or Black, it doesn't matter. This is before I saw The Wiz and knew that there was a Black Glinda. But I mean, like when you look at the different heroes in movies and stuff, like as a young Black girl, there weren't too many people that I could be like, I want to be her. And like, I wouldn't have gotten that response from my classmates. But yeah, I think for me, like it just connects with like, wow, I'm sitting here, I'm looking at this like legit Black hero. I'm seeing all these little kids staring at the poster and their little eyes are like twinkling and glistening. And I think that's awesome.
Awesome. Dorian, you're kind of, everybody else here, if you listen to Earth 2 Comicast, any of the feeds, you're familiar with the voices you're hearing, but you might not be familiar with Dorian because this is his first time. So Dorian, make sure you also just introduce who you are. And then, of course, your review and how it connects to your life story.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, you have a lovely voice. Perfect for a podcast.
My name is Dorian Gray. I am the dungeon master of the Laugh Finder podcast, which is an all stand-up comedians game of D&D. Even though right now we're doing Starfinder. My 2-sentence review of the movie is, well, my first sentence has one word, finally. And my second sentence is, it did something that I love, and that is not only were the good and bad guys dueling with their fists, they were also dueling with their ideologies. And I think that some of the best struggles have that. And the way it connects to me is I remember getting into fantasy and reading novel after novel, Mercedes Lackey, Terry Pratchett, Andre Norton, and loving it, but thinking, another fantasy setting in medieval Europe, another knight, another Hamlet, another place where everyone probably has a British accent. And it felt this, it's in some way filled this void that I finally got to see a setting with someone who looks like me in mind. I'm just going to say that.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right. So we're going deep dive. We're just going to jump right into this because that's the point of this particular cast. So I just wanted to open it up with a general forum of what you, so first I guess I should introduce myself real quick. My name is Patrick, and I do a lot of the back end stuff at Earth 2 and then just kind of show up for when we do Star Trek reviews, basically. And Runaways, absolutely.
You have your glasses on today. Oh.
And I have my glasses
I
on
know.
today
What's a
because
serious
I got
cast?
some notes. I
Oh,
got
it's a
notes. I'm
serious
like,
cast.
You see, I didn't interrupt them yet.
Yeah, it's true. This is a little bit more. Yeah, exactly. I lived in Africa for a year, and my wife. Well, I was on the board of directors for an NGO in Uganda, East Africa, and that's where we lived out in the
Wakanda?
bush. Well, actually, very close to where Wakanda would be found on the map. I guess you could say about a 3-hour drive north of Wakanda might be a good way to put it. So I had a very different take, obviously, as a white man going to see this movie. I obviously came to it from a different place. However, I was very excited about this movie coming out because I have a heart for Africa. I love the people of East Africa. They are not just random numbers, but actual friends of mine with names and children and wives and husbands. And yeah, so I was just really excited about this movie. And so I wanted to do a slightly deeper dive about the themes of this movie. And so that's why we're here today. So first, I want to start with just on a broad sense, beyond just yourself, as you already talked about how this impacted you yourself. What do you feel like this movie meant for Black America? And is this movie, in fact, a unique event for Black America, or is it just kind of one of a series or something that feels unique in the moment, but maybe will be forgotten?
Well,
Go
ahead.
I was just going to say, well, one question that I've seen over and over again on Facebook is, how is this different from Blade? How is this different from, someone even said Shaft, because they're both Black heroes. And I would point out that Blade takes place in America. Shaft takes place in America. And all of those. And because
most of the Shafts take place in America.
Most of the Shafts take place in America. But there is this implied history there. And that is an implied history of oppression and stuff that you just don't have in Wakanda. Black is the default in Wakanda, and that is, I think, what separates it from, say, a Blade or, say, a Spawn.
Good point. Hey, Dorian, I think maybe your mic is really close to your mouth, so you might want to move it a little further away so it's not taking wind.
I think to piggyback off that, you're saying that what's the difference? One of the differences that you could tell off the bat is that we've been always told, oh, Black actors or featured stars don't sell. I mean, you get your Denzels in there, you might get your Will Smiths, but then they have to be surrounded by a white cast. So they were kind of like the off-ball kind of thing, but you can't have an all-Black cast. So even Spawn, in the comic book, it's a mostly minority cast. They changed them up to most of the cast being white, or Avatar, The Last Airbender. They race bended all those races, not necessarily Black. The other thing is that, so when we were growing up, I guess most of us are about around the same age group. You know, kung fu movies were a big empowering thing, but it wasn't our culture. Then you had like anime, and that's samurai. That's not our culture. Or you might be in Lord of the Rings. That's not our culture. The roots of our cultures are never really celebrated. It's always like you're Black, so you endured, and you hear some stuff, but it's never really taken seriously about you come from kings, or you come from this rich culture or this rich history. And there's a funny thing. The gentleman that plays Avedon Barksdale from The Wire was talking about how amazed he was when he got to act with Idris Elba and some of the other actors are from overseas, and how they never had the shame of being Black. They never had the you know what I mean, like the back of your mind that you're not good enough, you couldn't be something. And they would talk to him about how when they were taught in school about how people of color invented mathematics and things like that. Are you eyebrowing me something, Mo?
No. Please carry on. I'm sorry.
No. I'm just saying.
Mo's just being a distraction.
Yeah,
okay,
that's exactly what I'm
distracted. So just like, oh man, it's so cool to be a samurai. Oh, so cool to be a knight. To have kids go up there and be like, oh man, it's so cool to be an African warrior. Not a savage, not a heathen, which is misrepresented throughout the ages what that actually meant. But to be somebody rich culture and have a pride in that. And also
touching on that, Anthony. How do you feel like this impacts African American children? It's going to sound a lot like I'm interrupting you guys.
No.
And that's
I rant, so I probably need focus.
You definitely have to interrupt Ant.
Did anybody hear the Ben Shapiro rant about Black Panther this week?
Yeah,
anybody?
No.
I did. I wanted to make a video response to that because he.
Here's your chance.
Right. So, he was talking about how I tell my little girl she can be anything she wants every day. If you're not doing that, that's something wrong with your parenting and parenting. And there's never been a Jewish president. And I was thinking, like, well, I mean, if you were back in 1930s Germany, ask a Jewish person if they thought they could be Führer. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's a different thing to feel like you're always perceived as an enemy, you're always perceived as a threat. And I think about these last 13 years, or so much has happened that joking barbershop and stuff like that. There'll never be a black president. Bill Clinton's the blackest president we're gonna get, things like that. And now we've had Obama. Now we have us. Does anybody remember the Super Friends? Anybody remember the Super Friends cartoon?
Oh yeah.
And how everybody was white unless you had your ethnicity in your name. Even Superman, if you go back and watch, even Superman was extra white. Like he was paper white for no apparent reason. Like everybody else had a little color in it, but then Superman was like, let's make sure you don't be white. Or when you want to play a video game character, like Final Fantasy 11, you couldn't be a black person. You couldn't be a person of color. You definitely couldn't be a mixed person. And I think that this is people going up and saying, I can have a hero. It's empowering. I hope I see different ethnicities, just like I wear a Superman shirt. You know what I mean? I hope I see that. Because
that's
like
an
our
interesting
concepts
comment.
of beauty. Yeah, just like our concepts of beauty and what could be a hero and what's good and things like that have been shaped. I hope this, because right now, the most famous scientist in America right now, arguably, is Neil deGrasse Tyson, black. Most famous athlete, black. For most of my life, the most famous general has been black. Most famous politician, one of the most famous politicians in the last couple of years, is black. So why can't we start taking pride in that? And why can't we introduce it to pop culture to have a pride in our heroes, our fantasy heroes? Yeah, Wakanda's not real, as far as we know. So like just let us enjoy it. Yeah. That's right. I'm trying to cut myself off on a rant.
I'm cutting you off now. So, Keem, what about you?
I thought we were never going to get to go.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, exactly.
I am trying.
But I mean, it's a little awkward for me as the white dude to be cutting you guys off, to be honest with you. But I will do my.
I know I'm about to say colonist.
Anytime,
Just call him a Muzungu, and you should be okay with it.
But I do want to keep this moving. But Keem, what were you seeing that this movie had as an impact to broader, like, Black American culture?
Okay, so first I'm going to say, anytime you need somebody to be cut off, Pat, you can just like wave your hand and we'll all just start like, ooh, ooh, ooh.
I need that. I'm going to call that right now.
Okay, so from a broader spectrum, I think the first thing is we got to see African tribes as royalty and as because a lot of times, like when you see stuff with like African tribes and stuff on it, like they're in their little loincloths, they have their spears, they're in like little huts, and this doesn't even just like, I'm not even gonna say just for the Black community, but I remember I'm really good on like flashbacks and like memories and comparisons, so sorry y'all, but I used to work at this place, and one of the guys that was a client of mine, his business was buying diamond mines and giving it back to the people of Sierra Leone. travel over there regularly. So awesome. And so one day he came up to the front desk and he said, "Okay, guys, I'm about to go back over to Sierra Leone." This white woman said, "Well, you just make sure you take all of your bug repellent and get all of your shots and, be covered from head to toe." And he's looking at her like, huh? Like, what are you saying? And she's like, because there's all those disease-ridden bugs over there. And I just feel so bad for you because you're going to be sleeping in tents. And he's like, "I'm staying at a Marriott. What are you talking about?" So I think I know that Wakanda is a fictional place, but I think when you see, it's going to inspire people to actually go and realize that all of the trees and huts and loincloths and then is, when we always hear as kids and adults, hopefully from your parents, is, we come from kings and queens. You can see that now, like, these people are real, and all of this is taken from different cultures. Get to feel a little piece of that, because a lot of us don't really know any history past slavery.
Thanks, Kim. So, Bo, you kind of have a slightly unique perspective because you are originally from Nigeria, that you came over when you were very young. Is that correct?
Yes, that's very correct.
So, but it still definitely informs kind of your view of this movie. And so, what do you think this movie kind of means for you, and for, in a broader context, African immigrants to America, and also Africa itself?
All right, so here's two things, right? I'm going to start this off with like kind of a negative, but I'm going to get to what your question real quick. Two things. Like Keem was saying, if you go to Africa, or forget it. Come to Nigeria. I would be very specific. Come to Nigeria. We have cities that look better than some cities in the United States. I'm not trying to brag. I'm not trying to shame. So what in this movie, what I do appreciate is the fact that they use Wakanda to show that. What I didn't appreciate is the CGI of Wakanda. You could have shot in some cities in Africa where you can, at least, even if you wanted to use it at night, show an actual thriving African city as opposed to a CG or a set. That's also besides the point. But your question is, well, yeah, like Keem was saying, if you come down to Nigeria, you go to wherever else you want to go. I can only really speak for Nigeria and most of West Africa. Yeah, there's places where, the Hilton in my country is a 5-star Hilton, like it's rated 5-star in the world. So I'm like, there's places where people come in and it's fantastic to be. So Wakanda is a representation of what Africa actually looks like, of what a very thriving African city looks like. So I appreciate that, so I'm not gonna get those questions anymore. As a kid, I used to get those questions of, oh, so you must have lived out, with antelopes and rhinos and shit. Like, I'm not getting that question anymore when you see, actually, no, I still get that question because there are rhinos in this movie. But, I'm not getting that question on the daily or stuff like that. So, as a young African immigrant could come in and say, hey, man, you just saw a movie about Africa that looks, better than some cities, or, again, it's fictional, but you have bragging rights per se as an African immigrant. Or as
Mo, what did you think about, how did you feel about how they kind of tried to represent all different parts of Africa through the different tribes that were represented under Wakanda?
And that's my other point, with M'Baku. Yes, M'Baku. He brought up a point in the movie where he said, hey, look, you guys are thriving in your little corner of Africa, or your little corner of the country, while we're up, and wherever we are, we're not getting the benefits. That is really what it looks like in some countries where you have Nigeria. It's like, it's granted we're not the best. Wakanda, again, as gracious and as glorious as it looked, it's not. It's there's still inner turmoil. There's still warring tribes and stuff. So that actually really shows what Africa looks like, where it's still, you still have the peaceful parts, and you still have, somewhat governed, and, people actually living within means that you wouldn't think, Africans live like. but then you still have people in the same country who are not enjoying the benefits or who are not reaping the benefits. So it's I liked how it showed that, you know, the dichotomy of what Africa looks like, you know, social kind of.
Hey,
go.
Yeah, what's up? Go ahead, Anthony.
I know that's my role, but I was talking to a mutual friend of me and Patrick's endurance about Ray about this, and we were joking about how, again, Nigerians were represented as the bad guys in this movie and kind of shown in one light. And I was wondering what you thought about that, Mo, because I don't know who in Hollywood got scammed by a Nigerian, but they have always portrayed
seriously. But you're right. Every time you see Nigeria in any of these movies, Tears of the Sun, in Wolverine, in, you know, the X-Men Origins, it was Nigeria, and was it Civil War? Yeah, that was Nigeria. In
Florida.
But yeah, it would be nice. It would be nice the next time, you know, like what Disney did for Uganda was show 2 years ago, Queen of Katwe was show Uganda in some sort of a positive light, you know, which is why I feel like
Queen of Katwe, if you have not watched that movie, that
you
is,
should go
in
see
my
it.
opinion, the quintessential. That's the only movie I've seen filmed in Africa that actually looked and felt like Africa.
And to me,
what is it?
Queen of Katwe. Where this movie fails, in showing, you know, where this movie fails, Queen of Katwe succeeds. But that's a different comparison. You know, we're talking about a superhero movie versus
a different kind of movie. It's a completely
that's what I'm saying.
I get that, but I was just wondering how they named a country that I would say a large portion of our immigrants, at least on the East Coast, are from.
West.
And they continue to show it in a negative light, and they kind of went through the checklist: child soldier, check; sex trade, check; kidnapping women, check. And I was kind of weirded out because and again, if I had no,
it's kind of funny because the whole child soldier thing happened in East Africa.
Right.
So, and if I had no interaction with Nigerians from even different tribes, that's all it is. And then the scams. That's all I would think it is. and I think that people are being incepted pretty much and without even knowing it, because I'm sure they don't recognize it. They just see some name of some African country. They'll probably confuse it with Niger. Like, it'll be, you know what I mean? Like,
that's why I think something like this is so important, just to humanize people, just to see other people's humanity. And it sounds like a simple thing, but so much comes from that. Like, what people think of Africa when they think that Africa is basically mosquitoes and war, is a much greater extent of, for example, what people think of Baltimore.
Yeah. When I went to go speak in Midwest after the Freddie Gray stuff, and they thought the whole city was on fire. They couldn't picture anything else because all they know is The Wire and the Freddie Gray riot kind of thing. And I think that humanization is a really good point because it's always easier to write off people you don't see as yourself, or they're less than, or their morals are messed up, or without realizing the common bonds we have.
Let's hold on that topic because we're going to hit that real hard in just a little bit. So you are absolutely right, and I want to do like a deep dive into that. But you're absolutely right. So one more audience really was watching this movie, and that was kind of white America. Mm-hmm. And I've actually been surprised by the level of very positive reception. Actually, this movie could have gone maybe one of two ways. It could have been. I'll never forget going and seeing Ali and being the only white guy in the entire audience. And this movie could have gone a direction of like where white audiences were not necessarily. There would be some that were coming out, but it wouldn't be in mass. But based on earnings, it seems like it is doing quite well. And I think it is forcing white Americans to ask some good questions, and I hope we kind of hit on that as we go through. That's one of the reasons I wanted to host this, not just for African Americans and Africans who might be listening to this cast, but also for white Americans, Westerners who might also listen to this cast, because I think there's a lot. In some ways, this is kind of like one of those movies where for Black Americans, it's almost preaching to the choir in a lot of ways. And it's actually white America that needs to see this movie in a lot of ways, if that makes sense. You guys have any other thoughts on that, or
well,
am I misrepresenting that? Like,
I think that for a lot of Black Americans, a lot of those Black Americans aren't in the choir. There's a lot of Black Americans. I feel like it hasn't even occurred to them that they're allowed to enjoy fantasy and sci-fi. And so it's important for people who aren't Black Americans to see that, but it's also important for Black Americans to see that.
So it's interesting you say that. Do you think part of that is because there's so little Black representation in fantasy and sci-fi? Do you think that's kind of a fulfilling prophecy?
Absolutely. I went to BlurredCon, and there were so many authors and artists that I had no idea that they were on their sci-fi and fantasy grind. They were there before I got there. They didn't just start doing that when I showed up. But yeah, I think it's a matter of representation of those people getting exposure. But one of my hopes is that this will show younger kids what is possible, and they don't have what they perceive as these cultural restrictions.
Yeah,
I think that's lessening. Because, like, think about, I don't know how it was for you, but when I was growing up, like, you kind of got, like, oh, you read comic books, you're into this, or you're into that. Like, now I feel like there's a freer notion to be yourself, that we're more connected as a world, I think. But I think there's still this thing, like, there's always jokes about Black cosplayers, or,
Blurs.
Yeah, like, it's one, it was putting ourselves in a box, but allowing other people to put us into a box. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Like, and you're open, you're allowed to enjoy things. This is what I don't get. Why does it bother certain people, like even on my feed, that people are happy about this movie? No one said anything about, well, I guess people did. People started thinking about when women being empowered to go see Wonder Woman, but they were quickly hushed up. You know what I mean? But we have major, like, news entities and personalities going on, being loud and bold with theirs and trying to shame us for being excited about a movie that represents us.
But you know the answer to that already, Ant. Like, you're asking the question, but you already know the answer. Like, people shut other people up for Wonder Woman because she was still a white woman. Like, and so even though, like, it was women empowerment, and that's great, and I went and I openly wept during that movie, but it's still, she was still a white woman, and you had like a couple of black Themyscirians in the background.
But they're window dressing. Make sure we admit their quota. We got this one.
Yeah,
there's probably an Asian one
somewhere. Throw a little bit of color in there so that everybody feels like they're a part of it. But this is not about anybody but Black people. And so that's
Can you imagine going into a... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was thinking, like, because a lot of times, remember going to school, when you were in school, they would have those pictures on the walls of the cartoon kids, and they'd be like all white, and there might be an Asian girl or a Black guy kid, or those roles might be switched. You know what I mean? That's essentially...
I can do you one better than that. In my school, I was the little Black kid. I was in a majority academically gifted classes. So usually there would be like me and one other Black kid. And I can name all of them, because that's just like, it was me, Nessa Green, William Huckabee, Clyde Kinsey. That was it. Like, and that was from like eighth grade all the way up. Actually, even in like fifth grade up, Shakira Kazi. Like, we were the two Black kids in our gifted class. That was it. So, yeah. Hey, Pat. Oh, woo, woo.
Hey. Oh, that's awesome. I think you guys hit a lot of... What's great is one of the reasons I invited all the people here is because I thought you would all give a kind of different view, and I think you guys did a great job of that. So,
okay.
All
right, never mind then.
Do you have something, Mo? Did I miss something for you?
It's okay. It's okay. I'll wait.
No, you're gonna.
Question.
I'll hear about it.
I'll go first. I'll go first on the next
question. I'll hear about it for weeks.
I'm trying to
give it to us quick. Go ahead.
No. I'll go first on the next question. So we can move this along. It's fine.
Okay. So, the next part that I wanted to go into gets a little bit heavy, I would say, and it might seem negative in some light, but I think that Wakanda, as we see it at the beginning, more from a political status than from like anything else, is not healthy, I guess you could say, or you could argue whether it's healthy or not. And what's interesting is there's some mirrors of Wakanda to kind of the direction that is trying to go, and you see this kind of across the world right now, a sense of kind of nationalism, closing borders, that kind of stuff. So what you kind of already talked about the scenery and seeing the buildings. We kind of covered that, but what do you think about the fact Wakanda is basically this isolationist country that has not in any way, short of the UN, they obviously are members of the UN Council, but they just haven't interacted with the world. I know there are positives and negatives, and a big part of that is that they weren't colonized, and so which is how they get to where they are. But think about that kind of broad stroke that was developed for the country of Wakanda.
Okay.
Anybody?
I'll say this like this: there are certain parts of Nigeria, especially Lagos State, where people are closed off. Like it's literally gated and it's secure. Like the security is top notch, and they hardly interact with people. They only come out to go out. They never really interact with people, and it's like and the worst part is going into those areas is all like you see. It's literally like poverty going into an area where it's nothing but beauty, and that is Wakanda, in my opinion. And it's like they hardly ever interact with everybody else, and it's. So what Wakanda did, again, like I said earlier, is show you in light. This is what really goes on in Africa right now. There are people who are living, way above the poverty line. There are people who are living way above their means, and it's like they can do so much to help everybody else, but instead they'd rather help their own, keep it to themselves, or go to the United States, or go, send their kids to the United States, or send their kids to London, and go get your education there, and almost never want to come back to help fix what's going on. And what they did with Wakanda, with T'Challa, Killmonger, is literally, well, maybe not with Killmonger because that was a little extreme, so I'm not gonna go there. But with Wakanda and T'Challa is like, those parents who only want to send their kids abroad because, or who don't want to, pay them money to help build up, the Nigerian universities, or build up, schools in Nigeria. Again, not saying that everything in Nigeria is perfect, or not saying that any, things in Nigeria are not great, but instead of
this exists, I think, most a very small 1% is not even right, a 0.001% that is actually upper class within most African countries.
Yes.
Usually lives in the city, and they usually have a gated community. Doesn't even do justice.
No, it's literally walled off. And like I said, going into that community is just, so I thought with the way they built Wakanda inside out, it mirrored certain communities in Africa, and mirrored certain peoples and how they live their lives. Now, what I hope this movie does, because at the end of the movie we get Chadwick, in that post credit scene saying, "Hey, we're going to share with the world." What I hope this movie does is, because it's painted this light, it's showing you this mirror to yourselves. Hey, Africans or certain people, this is what you look like. This is what you're supposed to be. It's a small step. It's a small step, but hopefully
Anthony or
I'm sorry.
Isn't there an argument to be said though that Wakanda still exists and wasn't colonized because they took these drastic?
So this is my perspective, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Mo, because I don't know, I don't have that perspective or that experience in there. But I think it's a little different because what you're talking about is like a social class barrier kind of thing within a country, within its own people. Okay, let me rephrase this. In the Black Panther comics, a lot of times, the U.S. and all the other powers in the world are actively trying to invade Wakanda. They're actively trying to steal their resources.
Okay.
And because they know that if they let people in like that, they will steal their wealth. They will steal that, and part of it's because of the history of what happened to other nations. Remember Blood Diamond? There's a line in there where they're talking about, oh, the white man found diamonds here. Lord help us if they find oil. And it was like, yeah, that's true. Movie to me when they're talking about, oh, you told the UN that he stole all your vibranium. Like you don't have any.
For
left.
the record, they did just find oil in Africa in the last 7 years.
Oh,
yeah.
shit.
See,
Nigeria's been one of the major producers
if
of
Wakanda
oil,
existed,
of crude. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Wakanda
I just have to toot my horn for a little bit.
If Wakanda existed and wasn't a threat with their level of technology, we would find her in real life. We'd find ourselves in a war with them at some point. For some reason, there'd be a war or some battle over resource or something like that.
I can give you an exact example of that. So while I was living in Uganda, at one point, the U.S. so they had found oil just within maybe 6 months before I moved there, and the U.S. deployed Marines. Basically, the U.S. and China were fighting over who was going to get access to this oil, and they're both making offers to Uganda. They're like, "We'll build everything up. We'll take care of everything. We'll give you this percentage." Da, 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 da. And of course, that percentage was really just going to line a few politicians' pockets. Deployed Marines in basically the area where this oil was, claiming that they were doing it to make sure that the LRA, child soldier, Coney, all that, didn't move into that area when Coney hadn't been active in that area for a decade, maybe. And it was just, to anybody in Uganda, it was very clear that it was a show of force, that they were basically trying to say, hey, you're going to give us this oil or else. But if you watched U.S. news, you were probably like, oh, that's so good that they're sending soldiers to Africa to help fight against, this evil man and that kind of stuff. And so even today, that is going on. And so you're right in that by Wakanda kind of closing its borders, they're preventing even that kind of subvert kind of way of action.
Because
in real life, they would have sent Killmonger. The U.S. would have sent Killmonger in there to disrupt their politics, and to cause
And they did. They have
conspiracy theories. Yeah, so it's a weird thing. There's also, I don't know if it's true. There's rumor to report it. Like there's a cutaway scene of he plays Dr. Watson in Bilbo. What's the actor? Martin.
I know who you're talking about. Martin dude.
Yeah, you can just call him Bilbo.
When Bilbo was talking to Black Panther in the UN, they didn't show in the movie, and there's kind of like a rumor that he's trying to say, hey, don't expose what y'all got. Don't tell them what you have. And I would be generally, if I was Wakanda, I'd be like, yeah, let's quietly stabilize our own continent. But I don't want the Avengers popping in our city for no real reason. I don't want, I don't.
That said, Anthony and Mo, I'd like to hear Keem and Dorian on this next question. That said, separate from America, separate from Western powers, there is extreme poverty, and even based on where Wakanda is on the map, it's right near Rwanda, and DRC, where there's been mass genocide, and yet Wakanda hasn't necessarily, it would appear, done anything to intercept that. Also, often what happens, one of the reasons African countries are often in poverty is because all it takes is one African country to be destabilized, and then you have refugee crises on all the neighboring countries. And you can imagine how, if that's constantly happening over and over again, it creates this issue of no country can kind of get its feet onto itself. So, all of that to say, and refugees and immigration and all those sorts of things are kind of a big topic right now in the U.S. So based on that, what do you guys see as like, how should it have, if you could go back in time and be the king or queen of Wakanda, what actions would they have taken or should have taken that would have been better, I guess is where I'm trying to go with this. Dorian or Keem or...
Well, I would say that a really good approach is the approach that T'Challa had toward the end of the movie, which is where he's just going places and he seems to be taking a sort of teach a man to fish kind of approach, where he's trying to make it so that the places around, especially the place where Killmonger grew up, are in a better position to help themselves. When the people around you are in a better position to help themselves, they're less likely to help themselves to what you have. So I do think that if I were the monarch of Wakanda, first of all, I'd take that car everywhere. Second of all, but second, maybe I would take the approach, even if I don't want to tip my hand so much. It's like, hey, look at all this vibranium we have.
Well, that was the question I was going to have as you were talking, is one of the ways that Wakanda is able to do the things it does is through vibranium. So how do they teach other men to fish if they don't have access to that resource?
Well, they do have access to knowledge. They do have access to pure economic capital. They have non-vibranium. Vibranium was like the basis of their prosperity, but that prosperity manifests itself in wealth and technology and education. So I would say spread a little of that if you're really stingy with the vibranium, because you don't want to get invaded.
Yeah. I agree with Dorian. I think just the only thing that I would do a little bit differently is, at the end, T'Challa kind of comes out and he's like, hey, we have stuff. And, he goes to the neighborhood that Killmonger grew up in, and he's letting everybody see their jet.
Bugatti.
None of that would happen. Like, y'all can't know that we have any of that stuff.
Right, Kim? Right?
I mean, because the way I see it, like, thanks to social media and stuff now, you see so many stories about like how there were Black communities in America that were thriving. They were thriving on their own, and whoever, the government or just your regular Joe Blow white guy, couldn't handle it, and so they came in and wrecked all that shit.
All of the above.
I wouldn't want anybody being like, okay, well, they seem like they're doing pretty well on their own, and they're not going to share. And if we can't get in there, then we're just going to destroy it. So the way they were sending spies out to keep an eye on everything, why can't those spies also become teachers and professors and scientists and in the regular community, and then just kind of, just put a little bit out there here and there, but still help people to be better.
Right.
So I would do that. I would want to help and put more technology and information out there, but I would definitely want to do it covertly.
Okay.
Oh, or Anthony?
Have you ever heard the saying?
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Have you ever heard the saying about World War II that German tanks were better than 4 American tanks, but Americans just had 5 tanks at a time?
Yeah, especially early in the war, that was true.
Right. Sheer numbers, Wakanda could get invaded and getting taken over. Like, no matter how much their technology has it, we've seen every alien movie that's come out, like the Earthlings take over the technology advanced people. And we saw it in Star Trek recently when the Earth shot those Vulcans. So I don't think Wakandans were wrong in isolating themselves.
Got it.
From the overall world. I think maybe letting them be Shangri-La, have that perfect city and that dream might have been something else. But if you see the other superpowers of the world taking the countries they know about, you're not going to expose your people to that. Like, you'd be irresponsible, in my opinion. I'm saying...
All right. Well, Anthony...
my opinion...
Oh, I'm sorry.
I agree.
Anthony, you made a point.
Can I ask you another question, especially shot at Dorian, Keem, and Anthony. Do you feel like, having seen this movie, you have more empathy? Sorry, Mo. Have more. I already know that you have empathy for Africa. Do you feel you already have more empathy after seeing this movie for the people of Africa? Or because it's fictional and a kind of science fiction, they aren't really Africa, or they?
I have the same feeling I always have.
Go ahead.
As a sense of loss. I really associated a lot with Killmonger. Like, we don't have that connection. Like, we don't have that. I mean, he went back, but he wasn't, and he was of the blood, but he wasn't connected to the rituals, the spirituality of the people and the land that was there. And I'm envious. I'm envious that Mo knows where he comes from. Like, and I feel like that's a sense of loss that, I think that what I love again about the movie is that, like, you don't have to, oh, you're lucky you got put, like, this, the mindset we had was, oh, you're lucky your ancestors got put in slaves, so now you're born in America. Instead of being like, such great things in Africa that you're missing out on. So I sympathy could be a different thing. I hope that conversations I've had with even missionaries who came from Africa and their views of African Americans, or I'm not saying Black Americans, I hope that changes where we don't look at each other as different so much. That's how I hope.
What about Dorian Keem?
So I'm just going to say I agree with Ant on the envious part.
Really?
Like, just the other day, I was looking at, because I'm Black. Like, that's all I can say.
No, duh.
One thing I'll say, so this is a very interesting point you're raising, Keem and Anthony, because I know that what's interesting, this is super left field, but I know that one of the reasons that Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings is because he wanted basically the English people to have a mythology like the Norse had, like the Greeks had. He was trying to build an English mythology. And I think what you're saying is that what you may be saying is that because you don't have that background, that in some ways this movie was able to fill in some mythology of past for you. Is that accurate, or am I off here?
I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's not what I was saying. What I'm saying is, well, yeah, I guess in a way, but just for just a second, Mo, you were saying duh when I said I'm Black, but what I mean by that is I was at I forget where I was, but again, only Black person in the room. And so everybody starts going around and saying, well, I'm 3/4 German, I'm a third English, blah, blah, blah. And then they came to me and I was like, I'm Black. Like, that's all I know about myself. So much so that there's like a DNA test where they're charging you $300, claiming that they can break down exactly like what tribe your DNA matches up with. So
$300?
yeah, it is an envious thing because that's, you absolutely know where you come from. And then like when you look at how families were separated, for instance, on my mother's side, I only know my grandmother and her mother, but my grandmother's mother was put up for adoption. So we don't know anything else about that side. And on my father's side, we know all the way back to slavery from my grandfather, but my grandmother, her father came over here from one of the islands and decided to change his last name to O'Malley so that he could get work on the railroads. And so that's all we know. So it's just a very muddled history. So to actually know where you come from and, have that different tradition that goes back, way back past slavery, like that's dope. That's awesome.
And it's greater than yourself. And I feel like I'm mixed, and I'm happy to be mixed and proud to be mixed and things like that. But in America, I'm Black. I associate with being Black, and I don't have that connection. I just don't. It's funny that I just saw an interview on the Breakfast Club with Chadwick Boseman. He was talking about Charlemagne was talking about how he got the Ancestry.com thing, and he said he was from
Yoruba.
Ivory Coast, something like that. And Chadwick Boseman was like, no, you did the wrong one. You need to do one that actually tells you where you're from.
Mm-hmm.
And he went,
that's the test I was talking about.
Yeah, and he went, that's what I'm saying. So he went down that list, and he was like, now I can go and talk to somebody about what my culture is and connect with where my people are from. And and have that connection, because just knowing you're from Africa doesn't really do anything from
Africa has what, 50 plus countries there?
right.
Mhm.
In that sense of history, in that sense of pride.
That doesn't even count all the tribes.
Right.
And when you talk to someone that's from the Pan African continent, and they know their history, know their tribe, they have a pride. I mean, and again, like everything, there's extremes that are can be unhealthy, but still that pride in who you are, and in the Black communities, a lot of times there is we can tell who comes from where a lot of times just by look, but definitely when you talk to someone, they talk about how great the fruit is from their homeland or things like that. It's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing, and to see that there's always been this division, at least in my time, there's always been this division between those cultures. And having this movie, and having for me to see somebody, one of the guards was a light skinned woman, and I was like, oh my gosh, a light skinned woman in the middle of Africa, like this is beautiful. I love this. Like even that was something for me to go look at that, you know. So awesome. Yeah, I agree with what you said, Patrick. But
no, I'm just trying to hear your thoughts. Thanks for sharing. Go ahead, Dorian.
Oh, I was gonna say that I think.
I mean, they killed that light skinned broad, but
yeah. Oh, it's a complete and total inversion, is what you're saying.
Take notes, Ant. Take notes. You're first.
But I think that I abandoned as a child a pursuit of the history of Africa for no other reason than because I couldn't find anything to indulge my curiosity. And later in my adult years, now that we have the internet, it's made it a lot easier. And right now I'm actually working on a tabletop RPG that's sort of like an Afro fantasy RPG. And
hey, tabletop.
And I'm tabletop role playing game.
Yes.
I was having a lot of fun looking up the mythology, and there are some really interesting mythological creatures in Africa. It's amazing. I'm like, why have we never heard of this stuff? But I'm really glad that if it's one thing that Black Panther can do, it can expose other people to that. And I feel like I myself have scratched like the surface of the surface, because in the creation of this, it made me want to know more about various African cultures, various African spiritualities. But yeah, I'm just glad that something like this is being talked about right now, because even when we're not talking about this anymore, it will stick with someone, and I hope that it will influence those people long term.
Thanks, Dorian. Okay, so now we're going to go to the big controversy, I think, of this movie.
Gosh. Oh, I'm
What?
sorry.
Mo,
No.
left out.
Mo?
I was not muted. No. Go ahead. I'm so sorry.
then.
No, that was not for you guys.
Now we know the things that Mo's saying about us when he has his mic turned off. All right.
Yeah.
He said, oh my gosh, it's so stupid. I hate them all.
Glad you're focused on the conversation, Mo. Thanks. Good job.
Hot mic. Go ahead.
There's been, well, first of all, who will I pick for this? Anthony, can you briefly, 2-sentence, summarize kind of what you see as Killmonger's aims and goals when he takes over the throne or takes over Wakanda?
Killmonger is the Black Panther version of Magneto.
No.
Second sentence, Killmonger.
Mo, go
Like
ahead.
a lot
What
of
would you
people
can you summarize
traumatized.
Killmonger's aims and goals?
Oh no, Anthony's
Oh.
not done.
Okay.
I do
Okay.
not agree with Killmonger at all. I don't think. I think.
Killmonger.
I'm not saying you should.
Okay.
Killmonger is a very powerful character. So, for y'all who don't know, I'm in mental health,
Okay.
and a lot of what they put in there. There was a scene that a lot of people seemed to didn't think was powerful enough when he talks to his father and says something like, "No, you died. Everybody dies," and the human brain, when it grows up in trauma, fear, danger sense, those glands can dry up. It deforms away when it as it develops. And he had his goal. He was focused on that. His rage helped focus on that goal. When he got it, he didn't know what to do with it. His rage had turned him into something he hated. Same thing when you go to any culture that's cultural trauma. He represented the cultural trauma that happened in America, and I thought it was very touching because Killmonger wasn't wrong, but he lost of what he was becoming.
But what before we get into whether he was right or wrong, what do you think was what was he trying to accomplish? I know it's kind of stated in the movie, but I just want to review that for a moment.
To me, he didn't want people to suffer the way he suffered and how he saw a community suffered. And he saw an imbalance in power, resources, and just worldwide perspective of a people that were suffering and being oppressed. He didn't want that to continue, and he thought that ending that and how he ended that would justify whatever means he went to get there. Again, like Magneto isn't wrong. Humans committed genocide. They think anything that's not like them, they dehumanize things that aren't like them. Magneto isn't wrong. We just hope the other way is better. Hope the other way is better.
Dorian, what insighted you on here? You got a really thoughtful post on Facebook, and there's a big movement right now on Twitter that Killmonger was right. Like I see a lot of memes, a lot of people posting. And I thought that you did a good job of kind of discussing that topic, and maybe you can kind of launch us off into that topic of whether Killmonger was right or wrong with kind of summarizing or talking about what you posted today.
All right, sure. So in summary, I said that is Killmonger right? Both yes and no. He's right in his assessment of what's going on, but he's wrong in his approach because it is not enough for him to help people throw off their chains of oppression. He wants to become the conqueror. He wants to become the colonizer. And what Killmonger fails to understand is that it is that mindset that is the enemy. He thinks he's completely justified in conquering the rest of the world under the banner of Wakanda, but there has never been a single conqueror or colonizer that did not rationalize their actions and did not rationalize their position. And once you rationalize that position, you can then rationalize your methods, which usually come in the forms of severe oppression, if not atrocities. So I think that in a very real sense, Killmonger became what he hated. It's like saying, I don't like serial killers, so in order to fight back, I'm going to become a serial killer myself. No, the serial killing is the problem.
Like Dexter was a
hero. That was Dexter.
Mo, do you agree or disagree with that assessment? What do you think about Dorian's assessment and also just kind of what's going on Twitter right now?
Excited. I can go.
Hot mic, Mo. Hot mic. Don't say about.
All right. 100% agree with Dorian, where Killmonger is wrong in his approach. He's very wrong in how he approached what he was doing, because that's about as right as someone, or Christians going into into what was it, with Saudi Arabia now and trying to destabilize that whole, the Crusades. That's about as wrong as that, saying, or Killmonger is as wrong as anyone who's, okay, you know what? I'm not even going to say that. I'm not going to use that. But Killmonger was wrong in his approach, because taking what they've done to you to turn it around to do it right back to them is not, I don't want to be that guy who straddles the fence. I believe we should empower ourselves, to be able to stand up to the oppressors, but becoming the oppressor is not the right way to go about it. And that was his goal. His goal wasn't just to, so in his goal and his aim, and like Anthony said, to jump on Anthony's point, he just because of what he had went through, seeing his father die, I think he just had to, he felt like destroying Wakanda was was something he had to do. But again, becoming the oppressor, turning, taking up the chains and wrapping the chains around somebody else's neck was what he wanted to do. That is not what you're supposed to do. That, again, empowering yourself is one thing, standing up is one thing, becoming what you hate is.
But we see that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Keem, what do you think about what Dorian and Anthony just said?
I guess I have a slightly different view on it, because I feel like his motivation was purely revenge and hatred. Like, and out of that, he thought, well, hey, you know, I can go and spread this around. But when he was dying, you know, he basically said, like, my dad used to tell me all of these awesome stories, and, you know, about how beautiful it was, and I never got to see it. And I think he just lived with that anger for so long, like, y'all killed my dad and then you left me here, so I'm gonna come and take all of this away from you. That's basically what I got from it. And so, like, I think his motivation was fucked up. I think his the way that he was going to go about getting his revenge, it was messed up.
Really?
And I'm trying to censor myself, Mo. You know, the F-bomb is like, I say people like it.
You can drop the F-bomb here. The same.
Drop a lot of them. It's not
Just
you.
drop one.
Yeah.
Beat
is
you
PG-13.
yourself.
What the hell?
Beat you
Like,
yourself.
guy.
I thought we were Earth 2, not like
Right.
I got
Don't be
saying
impressed.
ABC
Don't be impressed.
News or something here.
I got
Come on.
email from the
See, you got them
FCC.
Lester Freeman glasses on, Patrick. So she looks at she got that father figure going on.
Great.
So she being cautious.
I knew these glasses had power over Lucas. I didn't know they also had power over.
Man, I get to be sci-fi. Okay, fuckity fuck. Yeah. So I just feel like that's what I feel like it was, because then he even said, like, once he came there and was like, you know, we're gonna lead into a new era, and anybody who doesn't agree with me, like, fuck them up too. Like, that's not how this works. Like,
yeah, like
But he's an abused kid, and from an abused culture, and there's cultural trauma, just like there's family trauma.
So
So
let me
if
ask
you
you this.
abuse a kid, it goes further, and so that's all he could do. That's the reason why he was polluted by the trauma he felt. The same way it was kind of talked about our trauma as Black Americans in America, and how we
That's
view
where I
stuff.
want to go. Let me ask you this, Anthony. So that's true of the character Killmonger. However, the character Killmonger has definitely seemed to hit a tone or hit a nerve with many people in Black America that are, you know, saying Killmonger was right. Where do you think that is coming from, and what are they connecting with Killmonger, and is there places where they're missing, or look, where is that coming from?
It's not a new story. You have people that are oppressed, and then they take on attributes of their oppressor. You know, you get beat by your master, so you beat your kids. You're China, and you get invaded for no reason, and British forces you to buy opium, and so now you are unreasonable now because you refer to that time period as 100 years of shame. You have, you know, you're Bajor, you're attacked by Cardassians for no reason, and so now you become more militant. It's the same story, but we don't know how to verbalize it, have the discussion about it. Killmonger represents the fury, the frustration, and in people, how many conversations we've had since in the last couple of years about, well, I agree that they should be protesting, but I don't understand why they rioted, or why can't they be more violent? Why are they calling for pigs to burn? It's a frustrating conversation to have. If you look like me, if it was your daughter strangled on the street or followed by a man and then shot, if they look like you, wouldn't you be outraged? And to say this is the same thing, this is the same conversation, you know, Malcolm and Martin had. Which way is the right way? Which way does get your voice heard? I think the sad truth is it's somewhere in the middle. It's somewhere in the middle between Killmonger and somewhere with Black Panther. It's somewhere in the middle of, yes, we hope we can have this conversation, but a lot of people only respect the perspective of, oh, we might riot. You know what I mean? England, other countries have this thing where they're afraid of their people because they know what might happen.
Awesome. Dorian, do you agree kind of with that assessment?
with the assessment that
that's where this kind of meme that's going around that Killmonger is right, that's coming from kind of that place that Anthony just described.
Do you think it's true that sometimes people only respond to aggression? I would even go as far to say that is wrong in the extent of what he wanted to achieve. I think he went too far, but I do think that when people say, "Why are you protesting and clogging up the freeway?" It's like protests should be inconvenient. If they're not, then they're not a protest,
Right.
and no one will pay attention to you.
Right.
So I do agree with that, and I do think that the answer is probably somewhere. I think that the Black Panther Party probably had the right idea. People painted them as violent and stuff, but they weren't really. They were more fighting for their rights and willing to be violent if need be, in the interest of protection. They weren't going out looking for police officers to murder. And I think maybe that approach is probably the ideal approach.
So one of the
If I
other
could
interesting
just
things about the
touch-
character.
If I could just
Killmonger-
touch one thing really
yeah,
quick.
please go
really
ahead,
quick.
Mo. I didn't mean to.
No, it's fine. I'm sorry. I think we all saw the movie, and I think we're taking, because Michael B. Jordan and Killmonger was the spearhead, was the main villain. We're missing something. Did you guys see in the beginning of the movie when his father was talking to T'Chaka, saying, "Look, we should." His father took to teach them how to fish approach, arm them, help them, assist them. He didn't say we're going to once we arm them, once we teach them, we're now going to stand up together and take over the world. In that approach, Killmonger is wrong. His father had the better approach, and his father had the better method. Again, Killmonger was angry, and anger makes you do certain things, and people lose their minds when they're angry. So I guess, but if we, and not everybody can be rational, especially if you grew up with the anger. And that's Anthony's about to come in and say, "Hey, no, he was angry."
Well, I mean, this is
Did I
where it
call it?
boils down to
Did I
me.
call it?
This is the thing that boils down to me.
Nailed
is
it.
that strength without compassion is tyranny. Compassion without strength is impotence. The way our world works, if Wakanda wasn't weapons heavy, even in that scene of that movie, and they just said, "Yeah, we have a lot of technology. It's all benign and peaceful." Do you think they would keep their their resources without anybody trying to take it? No. What I think is that Killmonger saw a side of the world that we don't see. I think him going in other countries, stabilizing other countries, seeing how superpowers play with countries, how the World Bank plays with countries and people and lives, I think that affected him. It furthered the trauma that he already saw from his micro level to his macro level. I wouldn't say I think saying he's right or wrong simplifies a very complex issue. And I think that I'm really surprised Disney, of all people, let them make some of these statements in the movie, because
it's gonna make money.
Oh yeah, me too.
It's gonna make money.
Because it's a conversation that's had in our communities. Do you what's the proper way to protest? What's the proper way to affect change? What's the proper way when the peaceful solutions don't work? Are you supposed to wait 100 years before you get equality? Because it's not for you, it's for your grandchildren. Like, these are serious questions. How long would you wait? How long would you wait to be treated like a person or treated like an equal? Like these, and what's the answer? So I think it was very complex. To just say he was right or wrong, I think you're taking a very complex issue and breaking it down into digestible bites. That doesn't really work on Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff.
Killmonger was wrong.
Well, yeah, I made the observation that, is he right or wrong? Yes to both. I thought that his perception of what was going on was right, but that his execution is not. Two telling things about Killmonger is where he goes wrong is when he says that phrase, "The sun will never set on the Wakandan Empire."
The British saying, that was such a deep. I love that.
Yeah, and that was that really illustrated his position. And one question that it left me with is, let's say Wakanda takes over and the world is now the Wakandan Empire. What does that look like a generation from now? A generation from now, you have people born into oppression through no fault of their own, which sounds very familiar.
It's just like the social experiments where they take a classroom of kids and they go, okay, everybody with number ones are the good kids. Everybody with number twos are the bad kids. And they watch how the number ones treat the number twos and how their grades go down and things like that. Certain human things, no matter, we can demonize a culture, we can make people evil and everything like that, but certainly it's just the human condition.
So one other thing that Killmonger that you really touched on here, Anthony, is he's somebody who has gone into countries and destabilized them, and that is like a part of U.S. history that, first of all, is fact. I think a lot of times people think that's kind of conspiracy theory type stuff, but thanks to things like the Nixon tapes, like we know for a fact that the CIA did those sorts of things, and in fact did them very close to where Wakanda is in the DRC. Do you think that this movie sheds some light on that? Like, do you think most Americans are even aware of that? And what do you think about the fact that it's quite possible, one of you guys said earlier that in the real world, the U.S. would have sent Killmonger to do this. What do you think about that kind of awareness post this movie, I guess?
I've talked too much, so I will be quiet.
Go ahead, Mo.
Well, since Mo's not talking. No, joking. Go ahead.
Or Keen, Dorian, anybody.
Well, you can go ahead first.
Can you repeat the question, because there was a little doggy behind me.
Just this movie really shed some light on something that I feel like a lot of Americans turn a blind eye to, and that is the fact that America is not by any means always a good actor. And in reality, we have often sent people like Killmonger to go into countries to do exactly what he did. Mm-hmm. And in fact, that's how he got his training, was doing exactly that. So do you think this sheds any new kind of light on that, or will this spark any conversation about US's role in those sorts of scenarios, or do you think it's just like a thing that we'll talk about as part of a movie?
I think it's a thing that's going to get swept over as part of a movie. I mean, it would be awesome if people would pay attention and be like, where did that come from? But I think ultimately, I don't know. I feel like it's probably something that we all kind of, even if you're not into politics and all that stuff, you all kind of know that the U.S. has a hand in doing some shadiness behind the curtains, but
I think
really want to talk about it.
Do we have empathy for the people that we're doing that to? And I think that's what I'm asking.
No.
Is maybe this movie could
not
breathe
really.
that idea that those are people living lives in a country, or do you think they'll just?
I think they'll just sweep over it because it'll
fair enough.
Like you benefit from those things that are happening, and so like, it sucks for them, but I want
it's kind of sort of in the abstract in the back of their mind, like when we wear Nikes or have iPhones and don't want to think about how those are being made,
how they're made, and who suffers, and our genes.
Got it.
Yeah,
I think also what got me is when Killmonger went back, he got what he wanted, and then he totally tradition. Like for no reason, he burned the heart-shaped herb, and it was.
I was mad as hell about that.
There was a reason for that, though. That wasn't for no reason.
No, it was a reason, but it was a short-sighted reason, because she was saying for the next king, like your son or your daughter, like, and he was like, no, burn it all, because he can only see right now. He can only see in his race. He was so short-sighted, he couldn't see about the generations after him. And I don't, maybe it was just me. Like, it was so much in that was such a shame on so many levels. And I really haven't verbalized it before, but it was just a shame that he was so short-sighted in not only what he was going to be leaving behind, because all I could see was right now. And I don't know, there's a contrast to that people who think nothing about, so much about their ancestors, so much about their descendants. And there's also people who don't think anything about that. and that, it was a really sad moment for me in the movie. It was really sad, and I think that's where he just completely my empathy for him really lowered a lot. You know what I mean? It really decreased.
They may have even, I mean, if you're doing the character development writing that movie, you may even insert that scene to help draw a clear line between good and evil.
I don't necessarily believe in good and evil, so yeah.
Well, that's what I mean, but to make sure that the audience is not empathizing with him for the upcoming kind of, right?
Yeah. True.
So to move on to, we're almost done here, but one of the things that really stood out to me in this movie, and even like my wife as a white woman stood out to her, was just the women in this movie. And I mean, one of the most overlooked protagonists in especially action movies are African American women, but really all film. It's very rare for you to get African American women or African women in this case that
and love interest.
As love interest, all those things. I mean, we've been talking about this a lot as we've been on Earth 2 doing Star Trek Discovery, because Michael Burnham is also somebody as a character who really breaks that mold. But I just wanted you guys to maybe comment briefly on what your impression was of the women in this movie, whether you think they were also, there was a kind of breaking of standards. Under the big breaking of standard here was obviously the all African cast, but also there was a breaking of standards, I think, underlying that of the roles of the women in that cast.
You know what? Let me jump in real quick. Personally, I think what it did is highlight what I already know. Personally, you know, this is no. I mean, I'm being dead serious. It highlighted what I already know. So for other people to see it and see that, yes, you know, because you get these very, very off-putting documentaries on like Discovery and like History Channel, but they never really go in depth into how strong these women are. And they're African tribes, and there are tribes in Africa where women are actually seen as the leaders, you know, as the fourth, you know, the people in charge. And
we talked about that. Yeah,
finally get to see it in a movie. So again, for me personally, yes, you guys should take it in and enjoy it. I know this. Now you know it. That's it.
Keem, Dorian?
Okay, Keem, so I'm going to jump in here. So, like, Mo is like, you know, he's already known what I've already known as a Black woman.
Oh.
And observing interactions amongst different, you know, Black families and stuff. Usually, at least from my experience, like, you know, the man is the head of the household, but the woman is making sure that things are like, run properly.
She runs it. She runs that household.
Can't run
that like
household.
And like Mo said, not going to toot my own horn, but I had been that person making sure that everything was running. Yes, toot. Making sure everything was running smoothly. So no, it wasn't telling me anything different, but it did make me very happy to see so many Black women in power and unapologetically aggressive and bold.
Yes.
And because like when you do that over here, it's like, oh, she's an angry Black woman, blah, blah, blah. But over there, like that was her job. She was supposed to protect her king. She did it well.
The taste out your mouth.
Quickly.
Yeah, like,
hey.
And
you can't really accuse her of being
beautiful while doing it. But not over sexualized beautiful, but like truly beautiful, like not over sexualized, not just focusing on booty or something like that, but
they were covered,
beautiful, and fierce, strong,
and also
I'm gonna be in my bunk.
I'm gonna cut you off. Man.
Yes, Black woman.
It was so dope. Yes, Queen. It was so dope to see.
On this topic, feel free to cut us all off as much as you want.
Gonna. It was awesome to see so many darker skinned women.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's you know, it's not really, it's getting better, I think, but you know, a lot of times it's not really seen as beautiful in the beautiful norm. So when y'all are saying you don't really see too many Black women as love interests and stuff, you do, but they're all going to be fair skinned, they're going to be light skinned, they have the long shoulder length curly hair. So like to see these Black women with their short natural hair or they're bald, and like there's
tall,
yes, all woman power,
right?
like all of it was awesome because all of it,
Oh no.
except for being like a darker skinned woman, like most of it is my struggle. So I'm just sitting there like, yes, this is so awesome. And to not hear, it's always like tears my nerves up and makes me grind my teeth. Oh, she's so beautiful for a dark skinned girl. Like nobody could say that in this movie. Everybody just said those women were beautiful. They were fine. Did you see them? Did you see the way that she jumped in front of that rhino and stopped it? And just so. Yeah, that.
Look, man, bald Denai Guerrera could. You know what? Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Wrong conversation. Mo.
Yes,
Wrong conversation.
Yes.
Well, one thing I wanted to point out is that never in a mainstream movie have I seen such a diversity of Black women in personality.
Right.
You had the strong general, you had the brilliant, funny sister, you had Nakia, who was the moral compass, who was already at the evolution that T'Challa would make by the end of the movie. Like she was already out there helping people, and it was never in a mainstream movie. And I was so happy to see Stan Lee in this movie.
Yes.
Because I was afraid that they would just handle it like, oh, it's just a Black thing, blah, blah, blah. But Stan Lee's cameo let people know that this is just as valid a part of Marvel as anything else. So I was really glad to see that for that reason. But yeah, I just want to say that I loved the diversity of humanity that came in to this movie when it comes to Black women specifically, because I never see that in a movie that isn't Black made with an all Black cast. And
just two Black women having a conversation on screen where it's just focused on them, that alone.
And,
yeah, there was a king in the
them,
room.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, Ann.
Sorry. No. This is all, you go.
Okay, and I was going to say, and none of them were your sassy Black women.
right.
It was like, no,
Right.
and neck twisting and finger snapping and lip popping.
Yeah.
Like
It was more likely to twist your neck than hers.
And
Yeah.
even though there was a king and princess in the room, their whole world didn't revolve just around them and their conversations.
Their opinions
And
were
it didn't- and
valid.
There was valid, and they didn't have to belittle the males in the story to make themselves greater. They didn't need to. They were truly symbiotic, and I
think-
really love that. I'm sorry.
Going, I was just gonna say, I think from an African perspective, from an actual African perspective, I think that's going to be this aspect of the movie is going to be what's most controversial and
Yes,
most
you're right. You're right about that.
norm breaking, because in Africa, for the most part, not everywhere, but for the most part, there is an intense, strong sense of patriarchy. There's still, I mean, for one thing, it is very common for you to have multiple wives, for women to be treated. And even the worst part is, even amongst Christians in Africa, a lot of times they will use the Bible and other things to try and justify treating women wrong. When I lived in Uganda, there was actually a music video that was very common on the air where a young girl was raped in the music video, and then the music video ended with her being married to the person who raped her. So I think that what's interesting to me about this movie and seeing all those strong Black female characters, and I think so much about my friends back in Uganda, who I deeply care about and love, specifically I'm thinking of the women, I can only fathom what it will be like for them to watch this movie and to see those Black women stand. Like, for them, it was it was literally a huge cultural statement just to wear a pair of jeans. And so to see women like this on the screen, I think that's going to be the real impact on Africa itself.
Patrick, can I jump in?
But this could be our
really
Camelot.
quick?
This
Okay.
could be our Camelot, though.
All right.
Sorry, Mark. Go ahead.
Okay, so yes, you're right about the whole thing with, the patriarchy and all that good stuff. But I can only speak for West Africa or Nigeria, where it is common now where women are in politics, where women are leading the charge,
Absolutely.
and where
Really,
women are
West Africa is much
spearheading.
more advanced.
Yes. So when I said, so not to belittle what everyone else
No,
is
that's
going through,
accurate.
because I just had to catch myself. When I said this is something I'm used to, let me go ahead and correct that and say, from where I'm from and from the West Side, this is something I'm used to.
We talked about that offline. It was like 26 or 27 countries, right, Patrick, where it's more matriarchal than
Not countries, but tribes.
Tribes.
Yeah,
Be
tribes.
real clear.
Right. Sorry.
Countries were
tribes.
lines written by white people, and
Right.
tribes are the
I
actual.
apologize.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's how I've been conditioned to think about things. Yeah, I get it. But again, I think this can be our Camelot. This can be the these different, not just ours, but the cultural Camelot of this is the goal. This is the goal. And I know most says there are places like this, but even on different levels. I think that when it came to relationships, it was great to see she was empowered. The general was also married to I guess the captain of the guard kind of thing, the border guards.
He was in it,
and that she still had her.
It was three.
But he was in charge of. But he was in charge of that security.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not arguing the tribe. I'm not arguing the tribe. I'm saying that they were married and she still had her own agency.
Right.
She had her own agency about what her priorities were. And also, like, from the comics, this is something I'm glad they changed. In the comics, the women guards, they're all potential wives given by different tribes to Black Panther. I'm glad they changed that, because one of the things I loved about this was having a black male have relationships with women that wasn't all sexual.
Right.
I can't. How do you pronounce her name? She plays Michonne in Walking Dead.
Deny.
Like he had a older mentor sister relationship with him. Like she was the older mentor. Like I'm pretty sure she helped teach him how to fight, and I love seeing that.
Yeah,
so seeing the sister, also the love interest, the rest of the guards, the mom, like. I think that a lot of times, also in Black culture, women are really, really narrowed in their interaction with men, and men are conditioned to see women as only a few things at a time. And I think. Oh, sorry.
No, go on. I was going to say I didn't even notice that they were from separate tribes, which is also another thing that is really going to be norm breaking in East Africa, at least, is just to be married to two people from separate tribes to be married together is a big deal. So that's a pretty cool thing you noticed that I didn't even notice.
In my country,
and I just think it's just a great thing to actually redefine where, value relationships outside of just sexualizing both different genders. So I mean that's something I just loved about that and how we interact with everything.
Cool. Well, we're going to move on. We're about to close up here. I really appreciate you guys doing this. There's just a couple of broad things I wanted to cover, and then we're going to close up here. But one thing that really stood out to me about this movie as a white dude going and seeing this movie, and I was just kind of wondering, I was talking to Kyle, who we do Rebels with, and he was talking about how he was just wondering whether white America really realized what this movie is essentially saying is that our inner cities, and there are areas of America, not necessarily just inner cities, but there are areas of America, they're in so much trouble, so in need that they actually need foreign aid to come in and support and help out America, which is something we always think of the U.S. giving foreign aid to others and supporting others. But really, there's some social commentary here where it's saying, no, look at yourself. Like, you are the ones also who you're not taking care of your own. And so much so you're not taking care of your own that somebody has to come from the outside and do it for you.
Look at Mississippi. Look at Oakland. Look like these. I don't know. Look at Baltimore. Like,
yeah.
Well,
go ahead, Dorian.
Oh, I was going to say, someone shared on my Facebook when Trump called these certain places shithole countries. Someone shared a picture of like these really destitute places, and they were like, I don't know why he called them shithole, being sarcastic. So in response, I showed some of these beautiful places in Haiti, places where like you can stand waist high in water and see your feet. You don't have places like that in Baltimore. But and then
No, don't do that.
contrast, I showed those places in Haiti, but I also showed this area where there's just like all this trash in the water, which is near Washington, D.C. And that's our capital.
Yeah.
And they're pulling garbage out of the water.
That's
You know?
interesting you bring that up, Dorian, because something that if I was the one thing I would be critical of this movie about is I really wish it had been, for one thing, the school I worked at, we were training students to work in the hospitality industry, training students to work in the tourism industry, which is really where a lot of Africa gets its economic resources right now. And so being aware of that, I was a little disappointed that they didn't really film anything in Africa. Like I have been places in Windy that would have been better settings, say, for those mountain scenes. I've been to places that would have been amazing. Like, I mean, there's so many beautiful waterfalls and other things that they could have used and shown off. And then people would be like, oh my gosh, I want to be there. I want to see that. I want to touch that. And so if I had one major criticism of this movie, it was that they CGI'd almost really everything that was on scene in Africa. And they really had an opportunity to show off the natural beauty and just amazingness that is the African
I've
landscape.
heard that criticism several times, actually. Yeah.
You didn't get your Hobbit moments, like not Lord of the Rings moments, where like they showed off.
And I feel like that would have
Zealand.
meant something to African Americans even to see.
But I wonder how much of it, because I don't know. The numbers guy I usually go to is Lucas. I don't really know the numbers of it, but I'm hearing this really spent a lot of money, and so I don't know where they had to save money to like shooting on location cost a lot of money. I don't know where the money was spent or how it was spent. So I wonder if
Korea?
what were the safe bets? Oh, they went to Korea.
Yeah,
They went to
right.
Korea. They went to Korea,
Yeah.
but they didn't go to Africa.
Yeah.
Never mind.
And they
I'm
filmed in
gonna-
Argentina as well. They filmed in
Yes.
Argentina, and they filmed in Korea, but not in Africa.
Never mind. Try to defend the movie again. Sorry.
Yeah,
It's a wasted moment. It's a wasted opportunity.
It's okay.
The other big wasted opportunity that me and Mo have been talking about a lot is there is a huge music and even hip hop scene across East Africa and West Africa, and they could have been highlighting those artists. I think that would have been really cool. But it's fine. It is what it is.
Yeah, that's
It is what it
At
is.
this point, that's a nitpick. My thing
It's a nitpick. Those are both nitpicks.
all right. So to jump to to finish off what you and Anthony were saying is you made the point of you took or Kyle took the movie as look, our inner cities are whatever are not up to par. I took that more personal as, hey, look, there are African countries where if I was to end the movie, I would, like Anthony said something earlier where he said we would try to build out our neighborhoods, our neighboring countries of Africa first before we go reach out to the world. That way you make Africa a stronger continent before you go out to the world. So for anyone to invade Wakanda, you'd have to come through Uganda. You'd have to come through all the surrounding countries. You can't just come all the way into Wakanda. Wakanda would be the heart of Africa, if that's the point. So I took, I think that was a waste, not a wasted opportunity, but I just looked at it that way as opposed to, why don't we fix, our self first?
You're talking specifically about the ending where they set up in LA. Is that specifically what you have in mind? That they set up in LA rather than setting up somewhere?
But I guess symbolism where this is where your uncle and your nephew are from. I think symbolism. So that's why they went that route. Also, what's his name is from.
But I think you're right.
LA. But Anthony.
But I think you're right because they could have.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but you're right. They could have said they mentioned one center in Oakland. They mentioned another one, I think, in New York. They could have just said we're posting global spots. We're doing some in.
Right.
They could have
global.
They could have said we're putting one in Nigeria.
Yes.
They could have, one in Hong Kong or whatever. But I get it. Well,
but it's probably also implied
because
right?
we've seen.
Not well
Maybe
implied
it's
though.
implied.
Not
they
really.
needed to mention like local though.
But
Local to
I
them.
will say I will say this: we've had so many movies in the last couple of years pander to Chinese audiences. It was kind of cool for no reason to come to Oakland and talk to and because this is what I would say. Even in the, I can only speak from my perspective, Mo. So I'm not trying to discount anything, any suffering or need of education anywhere else. But I would say that seeing that kid see this Bugatti spaceship and these kids that grew up in areas that I grew up in see something like that, that hit me because I grew up in the bottom, so like it was nothing but abandoned houses, and and the milk crate on the back of the board and stuff like that. So I can only imagine if I saw something like that, how that would have changed. Because all right, I know I just rambled, but there's such a thing about I can't, and I won't be able to, and to have that switch flipped on you is how can I, or that's the goal, that's the aspiration, or like I don't know, that spoke to me, but I think Mo has a point that could have been more global. Like you could show a shot in Oakland and a shot in Uganda or whatever, and it would have hit everybody the way it hit me.
All right. So I'll tell you real quick, to watch Queen of Katwe and see the condition these kids are living in. I'm not discounting anything you've gone through.
I've walked those streets.
Exactly. Patrick, what do you think it would have meant? I'm asking you because again, you've done
it. Would have meant, I can't even express what it meant to Anthony, it would have meant to them. Maybe even more.
Yes. Because this is
they don't even see that process. There's a kind of a weird thing where even if you're at the bottom in, say, Philly or Baltimore or LA, you still see the wealth. It's just far away and impossible to get to. On some level, when you are in, the streets of Kampala, you almost don't even in your imagination, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's a nitpick. But yeah, you got it from me.
Yeah, it's all.
It's a good nitpick. It's a good nitpick.
Yes. So one last big question, and we need to move real quick through this one. But do you think me and Mo and some of us have talked about how there's it hasn't always been happy between African Americans and African immigrants, and this movie really, in many ways, brought those two communities together. Do you think that's something that could last? Do you think there's something that could be built out of this where a brotherhood is kind of seen and the kind of, I don't know, tension between those two communities is dissolved on some level? Or do you think this movie will just be what it is for each community and they'll kind of move on?
Well, I think, coming from a perspective as a stand-up comic, I have seen so many stand-up comics do material about the quote-unquote rivalry between Africans and African Americans. Now, in my personal life experience, that's not something that I've experienced. But I do think that Black Panther, I do hope at least, that Black Panther will be something that two groups of people now have to talk about. A sort of bridge, even if it will not, because if human nature is that if two people who are different in some way can find a way to have strife with each other, they will. That's just an aspect of being human. If we were all the same race, same religion, and same gender, we would be fighting wars over Android versus iPhone. But I do think that that this is probably this will help, and that it's probably one more thing that people will have to connect with.
You're saying you don't see the tension as big as it's hyped up to be, but this will be a bridge for what tension exists.
Well, I can't know the extent of the tension because like I said, in my life experience, it's just not something I've been exposed to.
What about you, Mo?
But,
I really wish you didn't call me for this one, but I really wish you.
You don't have to go. I can go to Anthony or Keen.
I want to hear it now.
I'll go because again, I was young. I came here. I was really young, and it was horrible. It was horrible growing up, and it's kind of like there was this Anthony said, called it a divide, and in my what I saw, right, is I looked at my skin and I looked at the next man, and the next man. Oh, I'm sorry, not the next man. I'm looking at the person in front of me, who's hurling these hurtful things at me, and you look just like me. How can you do that? One of my best friends growing up was white because he was the nicest person to me. He said to me, "Don't mind them; they're just ignorant." And I again, we were really cool growing up. So, but it was horrible. And so, from personal experience, I don't know. I honestly can't say if this is finally going to be, now we are all, this is, I don't know. I can't say. I'll say give it time and see what comes next. See what other representations of Africa we can get. I really, in my mind, I really wish people were this hyped for Queen of Katwe as as they are for Black Panther, because that is real Africa, and those are real people. But again,
thanks for sharing, though. I know that's.
I can't honestly say this is it. I want this to be it. This would be cool if this was it, but I can't. We'll see. We'll see. As time
was
goes.
Queen of Katwe based on a real story?
I'm sorry.
Yes, it is.
Yes,
it's
based on a real story.
Okay.
So here's my last kind of double question.
Wait, can I say something about this real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, real quick. I'm just trying to wrap it up. Go ahead.
No, I know. I think that right now there's a celebration on both sides, but I picture that there's a 5-year-old right now seeing this hype. Somewhere in Africa, there's a 5-year-old somewhere in America right now. There's a 5-year-old somewhere in England right now. They're all watching this movie. They don't know anything about certain the higher levels of that. They're just enjoying the movie. 20 years from now, they'll be like, "Hey man, that Black Panther? Yeah, man, that Black Panther." It's like, yeah, I mean, we loved him in where I'm from. And it's like, oh, he was played by an American, right? No, he wasn't. Yeah, he was. Look it up. Google 0.5. Hey, oh man, he's from North Carolina. Wow. And I think that it's little steps, and I think this is another connective tissue to. Even if we move half an inch, it's moving forward in the right direction, and I appreciate that.
That is a perfect launching point for my final question, Anthony, and that is, do you guys think this is going to set a trend where we're going to see more Black cast-oriented movies in the future? And also, what are your own personal hopes for Black Panther 2? And I'm just going to go right down the list, and Mo, you can go ahead first, and we're going to just go down, and then this will close us out.
Well, hell yeah. The movie made over 200 million in its opening weekend. If this doesn't speak to more studios, I can see every studio's wheels spinning. This is like Wonder Woman. Now, Wonder Woman gave rise to Silver and Black, gave rise to Captain Marvel movie, being like, hey, we have to do Captain Marvel now. Now we're doing Silver and Black from Sony. Like, thank you, Wonder Woman. Black Panther has said, again, people said we had Blade, we had Spawn. Shoot, we even had the Will Smith movie, After Earth, where it was him and his son, and his family was all black. And look, this movie right now is going to open the floodgates from every studio, because it's a good thing, but it's kind of like a bad thing. It's like, oh, they will spend money, but it's a good thing because we all want to see ourselves on the screen. We all want to see ourselves as heroes. I mean, I was excited when Black Panther, was announced. I did trailer reactions for both of the trailers that came out, so I was excited, And yes, so it's definitely going to open the floodgates for more Black cast. I don't know, more all Black cast. And
Panther 2.
Yeah, Black Panther 2. I really hope we get more Wakanda and we get more of Africa. That's it.
Anthony?
I know we're gonna get a Black Panther 2. There's not even a question about that. I want to see more. They did more world building in Wakanda than they did all the Star Wars movies. Like, I want to see the different tribes and how they act. As far as trends go, as soon as somebody else makes money with something, people are going to see that this makes money. I think that I remember they took Finn off the Star Wars pictures posters for Force Awakens in China, and I think that They can't do that here. I think once you make money, you open those doors. And I know Ben Shapiro said something like, "Well, don't you know you're making money for white people in Disney? And don't you know the two Jewish guys made Black Panther up?" Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. It's still, that doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. It actually makes more sense that that's what's happening.
I had something I wanted to say real quick. I'm really sorry.
And thank you, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Thank you very much.
Right now on Earth 2, just to close out, right now on Earth 2, we're interviewing Black comic book creators, and I hope we get more indie content, going mainstream now off this. We get more people looking at Black comic books and as opposed, again, nothing wrong with Black Panther, but as Anthony,
that's a big plug. If you haven't been listening to these interviews they're doing of different Black comic book creators on Earth 2, they are amazing. Some of them have been really impactful even to me for Black History Month. Like they're amazing. So
thank you, Patrick. But yes, I'm hoping we get more of those.
Yeah, they're really good.
As opposed to, again, thank you, Stan Lee. Thank you, Jack Kirby. But hey, what about Menthu? What about, somebody, hey, we have Black Lightning, which was created by...
There's gold or vibranium to mine in these comics. Go ahead. Hollywood, take them, buy them.
All right, I didn't mean to do that. Yes.
No, that was great. I had nothing to say.
Team, what about for you? Do you see more movies like this? And what are you hoping for Black Panther 2?
Let's see. I hope we see more movies like this, but I hope that we see more movies with diverse Black casts that are not just superhero based. And I hope that we see more movies that have a majority Black cast that are not caricatures. Because, you have Tyler Perry movies, right? But a movie like it's like the sassy Black woman and the crackhead cousin and all that stuff. So can we just show some normalcy? Like how, sometimes that's somebody's reality, but can we also show them a positive side? Like this is also how life can be. It's not always doom and gloom with the fat Black dude in a wig telling you, hello and stuff like that. So like, I want to see like more diverse movies. Black Panther 2. Definitely excited for it to come out. I hope that it keeps the same energy as this. I hope that we see like Ant said, I want to see more tribes, like seeing all of those tribes come together for his, for him to be challenged and seeing them mix in old school tradition with modern culture. Like that was awesome. So I want to see more of that. And I don't necessarily need to see any of the Avengers in it. Like I can just stand to see the people of Wakanda helping out other nations and doing their thing, or just, trying to make things happen.
I want this to help out Black science fiction and fantasy so much that we can afford to have bad Afrofuturist movies. I just want us to have
hell yeah, right? Hell yeah.
Just on the Sci-Fi Channel, just terrible CG. Anyway,
and we ain't got to be nervous. Like, don't never let's have another one again.
Exactly. That is exactly the point that I was making. As for I have two hopes for Black Panther 2. One, use the fight choreographer from Winter Soldier.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
And no. And two, I would love a cameo from Luke Cage.
Like on vacation?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Vacation.
Drinking Wakanda coffee.
If Luke Cage went to Wakanda, he ain't never going back.
Shoot. Have all the coffee.
Yeah. Use the fight choreographer from Winter Soldier.
Yes. Please and thank you. Please and thank you.
I will say that I am also hopeful that, I think we are all holding our breath during opening weekend, right?
Yeah. I was.
This would hit good box office numbers, and so now that it is, it's really exciting to be on the other side of it and be able to breathe.
I was hoping I had to defend a bad movie. I was just glad I had to defend a bad movie because I was
really nervous. I was really nervous about that too. And so I'm really excited for what's ahead. My outside hope is that they would dare to do a Batwing
Oh,
Time I say this comic character will never get a movie, they seem to like. I mean, there was a time where I said Iron Man will never get a movie, and then they got an Iron Man movie, and so
The Midas touch.
The comic book movie gods. If you hear me, like Batwing, you want to see what a hero in real Africa looks like. Those first few issues of Batwing are just amazing. The sad part is they decided, you know what, nobody actually cares about Africa, so they switched him to a character in America and then moved on. But
then he became
those first issues of Batwing are amazing and take place in the DRC and with a police officer, and the police are corrupt, and by night he's basically Batman. It's amazing. So anyways, that's my plug. Really appreciate you guys coming out and dealing with a white guy trying to host this conversation. I appreciate your authenticity and ability to just be open about stuff. I know some of you even shared some kind of hurtful, private, personal stuff that went through your life, and so.
Yeah, Mo only called you columnist once, so that was pretty good.
I have to tell the truth. I have to tell the truth. It's like now.
You know, one thing I would love for them to have done is there are a few words and kind of phrases that are used beyond just tribal languages across, especially East Africa, and it would have been really cool for them.
I know it would have been so dope if you heard Muzungu.
It would have been amazing. And to at some point been called a Muzungu, or like she said a jet bike. They could have called it a jet.
Boda. Oh.
Like things like that would have just been amazing. Like I would have just loved it personally as somebody that had been to Africa, but it's fine. It's fine. So yeah. I just appreciate you guys coming out and doing this. So all right. Well, thank you all for listening in. I know it was a long one, 2 hours, but I kind of knew going in this is a lot to cover, and I appreciate you being willing to talk about some pretty heavy topics and not just do a simple review. So thanks, guys. Any last shout outs or anything need to go out?
Please listen.
Dorian, you want to plug your Wakanda Forever? And Dorian, you want to plug that podcast of yours that you're doing?
Oh, I'm going to be hosting a show at the DC Improv on March 9th, which is before the 10th, but after the 8th. And I'm going to
do that math in my head real quick.
Dorian, should you maybe explain if they're looking for Dorian Gray at that?
Oh yeah. I perform in two genders, and the one I will be performing in is Violet Gray, and that is who will be at the Improv. So look at the person with purple hair. That's me.
So it's not his sister who is subbing for him. It is, in fact.
I get that so much.
I made that mistake twice.
But yeah, also Laugh Finder podcast. See me herd drunken cats in the form of roleplay gaming.
Awesome. And also, I want to make another plug. If you have not listened to some of these interviews, in particular the interview with Robert Roach, who is the comic book creator of Menchu, I felt like he was just trying to pass on wisdom. He was just like, all right, listen, young people of color, I want you to hear these words of wisdom for me, and it was amazing. So yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, guys.
One more thing. If you are like Dorian mentioned sci-fi. Alan Clark created Babel, and it's heavy on sci-fi, so you should read it. Well, actually, you know what? I will, when we get those,
awesome.
I will give you that's all I do.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
See you.